very, very complicated to analyse because of the dynamic characteristics of the aerodynamics. You can model the bouncing of the car on the tyres. Modelling the aerodynamics is very difficult in a wind tunnel. I honestly don't know whether they can do it in CFD or not, whether CFD has time constants for aerodynamics. But it is not surprising they've run into the trouble as they've reintroduced ground effect, and the car, which seems to have possibly the best downforce capability, is the car that's suffering the most porpoising, which is the Mercedes. I did send...
Alright, so that was a clip from Peter Windsor's channel. He had Peter Wright on, and they were talking about Mercedes' problems and what type of road is ahead of them, or at least the long road ahead of them, in terms of finding solutions to their car and its characteristics. Now, some interesting points to note from Peter Wright's analysis of the situation the Mercedes are in is that he believes that they've got the most downforce on the grid, and it's because they've got the most downforce that they are having problems with their car, because it's ground effects era. The downforce is deployed differently, so you've got porpoising coming onto the car as a symptom of the issue, right? It's not like it's not the cause of the issue, but it's the symptom, right? So here are the bullet points. I suppose they've got the most downforce on the grid, they've got the most potential in their package, they've got the hardest problem to understand, they've got technical limitations in their development tools. So CFD and wind tunnels, they can't actually simulate porpoising. They can't, it's a really deep problem Mercedes have, but it's one they can probably solve given time, right? Of course, I still think this year is a write-off for them. No, well, not a write-off in so far as, they're still going to be like one of the best teams on the grid. Of course, it's Mercedes, but this isn't a championship challenging season, so for Mercedes' own standards, that's a write-off. The solution for their problems isn't quick. The solution likely can't be shared with other teams because they just don't have a similar package to Mercedes, and there's a whole lot of esoteric suspension knowledge that comes into play here in terms of rectifying Mercedes' problems. Now, they've got the hardest problem to understand on the grid because Peter Wright explains it really well. I actually just suggest people go watch that video. But they've got the hardest problem to understand on the grid because there are no tools to actually test it. CFD doesn't have the variables for it. Peter Wright, he specifically says it doesn't have a time variable on the airflow. So you can't actually simulate air going over the car over a period of time, and you oscillate the car to try and simulate a porpoising or something. They can't do that, as the CFD just isn't developed enough for that. You can't test it in a wind tunnel either because the wind tunnel is paper smooth, quite frankly. So yeah, Mercedes are in a bit of a pickle here, but the silver linings are that their car does have the most potential on the grid. Their car also has the most downforce on the grid. And of course, when they do eventually figure all of this out, they stand to make huge gains, of course. We're talking maybe half a second, but I mean, we'll get to that when we get to that, if we get to that, who knows. Mercedes might just give up on this whole zero pods concept and just go with a more traditional side pod concept, who knows, right? And word on the street is James Allison has the belief that Mercedes will have their problems rectified by Australia. That's very ambitious from James Allison, very ambitious, because the engineers and aerodynamicists, at least the retired ones, right? The retired nerds. I'm saying nerds with all due respect here, like I just need a shorthand for this. But the retired nerds, they say the problem's really hard to fix, and they're gonna take a really long time to fix. It's not by third race weekend, or we could have all of this sorted. They don't believe that, and I don't believe that. I don't believe that before hearing Peter Wright. All right. because you eye test the car, you eye test it through pre-season testing, of course, and you think to yourself, okay, Mercedes are doing their sandbag thing as usual. We'll have to wait until the first race. First race happens, Bahrain. They aren't really in it. They aren't really in it. They Hamilton gets a podium because of Red Bull coming up a crop with reliability. But anyways, upgrades will come. They won't be as soon as some highly optimistic predictions think they'll be. And it's very likely that upgrades have to be approached in a more holistic way with this formula. But we'll just have to see what happens. We really will just have to see what happens. Anyway, peace.
Hell breezy. Let me show you how to keep the dice rolling when you're doing that thing over there, homie. Hey, let's go! Cause I'm feeling like I'm running and I'm feeling like I gotta get away. Better know that I don't and I won't ever stop. Cause you know I gotta win every day. Go! See, you really wanna pop me. Go! Just know that you will never flop me. And I know that I gotta be a little cocky. Go! You ain't never gonna stop me. Every time I come a nigga gotta set it, then I gotta go and then I gotta get it, then I gotta blow and then I gotta shut it. Any little thing a nigga think that he be doing, cause it doesn't matter, cause I'm gonna dead it. Then I'm gonna murder everything and anything about it. Boom, about a bing. I gotta do a lot of things to make it clearer to a couple niggas that I always win and then I gotta get it again and again and again. And I be doing it to death and now I move a little foul. Nigga better call a rap and everybody know my style. Niggas know that I'm the best when it comes to doing this and I be banging on my chest and I bang in the east and I banging in the west and I come to give you more and I will never give you less. You will hear it in the street and you can read it in the press. Do you really wanna know what's next? Let's go. See the way we on it and we all up in the race and you know we gotta go and try to keep up with the pace and we struggling and hustling and set it and get it and we always gotta do it, take it to another place, gotta taste it and I gotta grab it and I gotta cut all through this traffic just to be at the top of the dome. But I know I gotta